Well, this got serious quick.
Yeah. Welcome to the RideForUnity podcast. This is the first ever podcast we're going to be doing, and I've got an unbelievable guest. I say guest, but we're sitting in his back garden. Please welcome Blake Janover.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You forget you're in your own house here.
Yeah, I'm a guest in my own home.
How do you feel?
Light and breezy. It's like nice Florida weather. We get 45 minutes of this a year, and we're enjoying it together.
I've already had more than 45 minutes today. It's
Yeah.
absolutely glorious.
Well, we've been speaking all day.
We have.
So
A bit too much, maybe.
yeah, I hope you have something left in the tank.
Nothing. It's all gone. That's it. I say we just sit here in silence.
Yeah, well, it's a nice place to do it. We could meditate.
Did you bring the tumbleweed? It's tumbleweed, I think. No? Let's just start. Sorry.
Will they edit this out?
No. No. The whole point is that we just did this unscripted.
Yeah, well, that's going to be obvious as
I
we
think,
carry through.
it would actually be hard to script this sort of nonsense.
We're talented.
Very. So, well, one thing serious, just for 1 second, you are actually very talented in the time that I've got to know you. Very talented.
It's nice of you to say.
I think just to be a little bit official for a second,
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you to give, and we're going to do this very, very quickly so we can get on to much more interesting stuff.
Sure.
Because I want to get in your mind a little bit,
Sure.
or a lot.
Mm.
And I want to get into your soul as well.
Let's go.
But before we do that, give this 1 second resume of Blake Janover.
I'm being self-promotional.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. A 1 minute resume.
You've got 45 seconds left.
Okay. I'm the chairman and CEO of Janover, which is a small publicly traded software company on the Nasdaq. I would say, also married to my wife, my best friend, and have a 5-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy. I'm an alumnus of 2 of probably the most prestigious universities or academic institutions in the world, but I didn't graduate from either of them. So I'm a Harvard Business School alumnus via the OPM program, and I'm an alumnus of the National War College via their kind of first private sector fellowship with the National War College Alumni Association. I've been involved in some billions of dollars of transactions on the commercial real estate side of things. I've employed probably 1,000 people across the globe at any point in my life. I'd made and lost millions, twice before I turned 30. Built infrastructure across the globe, across, lots of different languages and continents. Sure, there's some other stuff in there. I guest lecture at the local university. I'm probably like one of the things I'm more proud of is I'm a mentor and guest lecturer at the Zell Entrepreneurship Program at Reichman in Herzliya. This covers some ground.
That's fantastic. And I mean, you say all of that as if it's just regular Joe. That's how it comes across, honestly.
It doesn't get more regular Joe than me. Or regular...
But this is the thing, is that that's what you think of yourself.
Sure.
I don't.
That's nice, I think.
Well, we'll see what comes out of my mouth next. You're anything but a regular Joe.
Okay.
You are not only very accomplished, but the path that you've taken to get there, from the little I already know about you, makes you anything but regular Joe. But you see yourself as a regular Joe. You really do.
Yes.
Why?
Well, this got serious quick.
Yeah.
Well, I guess fundamentally everybody's completely equal. So I'm no better or worse than anybody else. If I'm going to be, I'm probably more likely to classify myself as worse at a lot of things than better at any particular thing. I don't feel, this is going to sound obnoxious, I don't feel particularly accomplished. I don't feel like I've achieved the things that I'm capable of or ought to. Certainly by this point in my life, so it might sound like I've done a lot. There's been a lot of failures along the way. There's been a bankruptcy. I've been dirt poor more than once. It's complicated, man. I'd have to. I might have to let that simmer for a little bit and maybe come back mid conversation with an answer. It's a good question.
I think that for me, it highlights the disparity between how we see ourselves and how other people see us.
Yeah.
Not talking about you particularly here, but the way you answered that question really highlights that gap can be huge. And I don't know what that tells us about ourselves. Because does it tell us something about our humility? Does it tell us something about our arrogance? Depending on how we take it, of course. Does it tell us something else?
My wife finds me quite arrogant.
So does my wife find me as well. I think that's a wife thing.
I think I'm sweet and humble. You know, there's like a couple interesting things there that I don't know how we can unpack them. I think that you're probably more clever than I, so you'll, to the extent you want to unpack something, you'll figure out how we do it. But I
reject that motion. I'm just a regular Joe.
A regular Mordecai. So I think that, like, one thing I definitely have always had is imposter syndrome, and this kind of starts. It's one of the reasons I'm still kind of bearded with glasses, because when I started my first business, like real business, because I started, I was enterprising from as young as anybody could possibly be enterprising. But when I started my first business, I grew out a little bit of facial hair, and I didn't use contacts. I used glasses because it made me look like a little older and a little more sophisticated as a college dropout, 19-year-old kid trying to do, big deals in business. But still, fast forward to today, and I can like run off all of the, pedigree or whatever, and I still feel like, I said it to you earlier, I'm like, of all the people like, why me? And I'm just assuming that, like, I was geographically close.
You happen to be available.
I just happened to be adjacent to all these cameras.
Yeah. Just like, I'm in town. Why not? I've got nothing better to do.
So there's definitely imposter syndrome. And you introduced me to a concept that I'm still, I don't know if we're going to go there. If I don't think I particularly want to go there, but I'll go wherever you want. But that, like, PSG or
PTG, post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, that's like
It sounds like you're rejecting the notion just by forgetting the acronym.
I could be very aloof, and no, you've introduced me to some interesting things in the time that we've known each other, and this one's something that sits in the back of my head.
So let's park the PTG for a little bit. I do want to come back to it.
It might get dark before we get there.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But
play on words, right? It might get dark outside, or it might get dark in the conversation.
I'm now wondering.
Is that a double entendre?
I think that counts. Yeah, for sure. Double entendre from the Latin. Forget it. I won't bore you with the Latin.
Please tell me the Latin.
No. Let's leave the etymology of the whole thing. We'll just put it down. Double meaning.
Okay.
Done. Okay. So we'll wait for it to get dark, and I'm not going to tell you which one.
Yeah.
And we'll find out. We'll talk about trauma, because I do find trauma a fascinating thing to talk about, if we're willing to talk about it. You can snort as much as you like, but I tell you one of the things I find, it just came to me whilst you were talking. One of the things I think about you, and you can tell me whether I'm way off base here.
Way off.
Okay, so we'll talk about something. So I'm going to say it anyway. So I think that you are incredibly capable, and we sort of touched on this earlier a little bit, but I've sort of honed my thinking about this. You are incredibly capable of zooming in to the absolute detail on what you want to zoom in on.
Yeah.
Whilst at the same time completely blocking out anything that you would see as a waste of space on the hard drive, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so I create systems and I optimize for those things I want to optimize for, and everything else is noise. So it's only recently that I've purchased different color shirts, or like an alternate pair of pants, because I was just all white t-shirts and jeans for probably 2 decades. And my wife is like really not happy about that. But yeah, I stopped watching cable TV or news probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. So I don't know, like most of the famous people or things happening in any given day or time. I try not to read anything short form. I only read I prefer to read older long form information, like old books to new blogs. I don't know. I optimize for what I don't know anything about any sports. Just doesn't add value to what I'm doing. Not to talk poorly of sports. You know all the stuff about sports.
You've completely ruined my
life. But I'll just optimize for things I'm interested in, right? I find public companies interesting. So like there will be S1s all over my house. Like if you peruse my house a little bit, there will be like printed S1s. Sorry, nature. Like this, all over the place. But I don't know. I recently found out what a Swiftie is, which is a fan of Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I know that because I have a 12-year-old daughter.
Yeah, I have a
19-year-old daughter who is actually much more of a Swiftie than the 12-year-old. But yeah,
are you a Swiftie?
I have to say I'm a little bit of a Swiftie.
Can I leave now?
No, because you don't like sports, so we're even. I love her music. What can I say?
Yeah.
Through my daughter's passion for it, but I learned to really love it.
Sure.
I think that she's an amazing artist.
Sure.
And I think she's given a lot to this world, actually.
You see, she may have, and I have no idea of any of it.
Which I think is one of your superpowers.
Perhaps.
Because your ability to block out anything that is interesting but irrelevant for you, I think allows you to drive forward at a pace that most of this world cannot go at.
Okay, so I'll give myself credit for one thing. I've been good at pace. I've been bad at a lot of things, but pace I've done well. Because when you think about it, I've been reset to 0 twice in my life, and I'm 41. So I've been reset to 0 more than twice in my life. But, most recently I was pretty much poor in my early 30s. I remember before I met my wife, so maybe this is like 10 years ago, 9 years ago. So I'd done some things and accomplished some things, and I'd gone absolutely broke again. And I remember, going to the Supercuts for a haircut. I had a little more hair then, not much. And it wasn't Tuesday when they had the discount. So the $10 haircut became $7 or $6 on Tuesday. So I was like, I just gotta wait till Tuesday. And that wasn't even a decade ago. And if you look back then, I didn't have this company that I have now. Shoot. Can I curse?
You can curse as much as you like.
Okay. I didn't.
Might not air ever. But you can curse as much as you like.
I didn't have the most important things, which are the wife and kids, but I didn't have the business. I was a school dropout. Oh. So I've had the ability to, I've had these fabulous, sprints and bursts. And now I think, I'd like to believe that I've learned enough to figure out how to do it on a more permanent basis, as opposed to in peaks and valleys.
Yeah. Do you think, because obviously we haven't gone into detail here yet, and I'm not sure we will. Otherwise we can speak for 48 hours straight. But
you deserve better than that.
Sounds like a penance. But no, I would be honored, to be honest. But from the stuff I know about you, there's no doubt about it. Your pace is just insane. The question is, it's a question that's just come to me now. Do you think that there's been something a little bit self-destructive in you that has actually set yourself up to succeed massively, but without any safety net, sort of like a house of cards almost waiting to fall?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think that that's not where I am now. I'm certainly in a better position financially than I've ever been in my life. Not that I'm at all, ready to, I'm not set, right? But I've done a better job, and I'd like to, that credit goes to my wife and kids, right? Because that changes how you think about things. growing up, and certainly in the first two like big successes where we went from 0 to millions to not zero. Zero would have been nice. Like, so you go from 0 to millions to negative, right? And you have to like dig yourself out of negatives. So I did that impressively twice. And I remember I met this guy. I talked about him recently. It's probably like 9 years ago. Ricardo Caporal was like a mentor. And he gave me this book. I told him my story, and he gave me this book. It was The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and it introduced this concept of upper limiting behavior and self-sabotage. And it was very interesting. I devoured that book. I read that book in a day, and I found out a lot about myself there. Right. So there was definitely some of that self-sabotage and upper limiting behavior in the velocity at which I moved, with the leverage with which I did it. Now, there were other things at play too, and I think they're both worth mentioning. So one of them is, we kind of grow up. So you create stories as we grow up. I think a great book around stories is Sapiens, right? Like we're storytelling machines. So one of the stories I remembered growing up is my dad telling me that the measure of a man is how he performs with his back against the wall. And it just so happened that I ran those first two businesses with my back against the wall. Now, when you're starting a business, your back is against the wall, right? So some of it became manufactured later, where I just like kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and created some tough situations. But I will also say that when you look at successes, like wild successes, which is, survivorship bias, right? You say, who are the people that are most successful financially, right, or in business? What many of these guys have in common is they took massive risk and made massive concentrated bets. Massive. And they had wild success. And what you don't see, you see, but what people don't see is that is the 0.0000001% of the other million lunatics that did the same thing. So I'm one of the million lunatics that did that same thing twice. And candidly, I'm doing a slightly different, hopefully healthier, more thoughtful version of it now, where the intention is still to create wildly asymmetric, kind of outcomes. So,
I think that sorry if I'm just talking about, I think that being that lunatic, in inverted commas, not just for you, I'm sorry, for any of us.
I don't mean to call myself a lunatic. I'm like a thoughtful human.
You're labeled. That's it.
that's
the lunatic.
That's the label I get.
Podcast with the lunatic.
Okay. Well, let me just say one more thing, but I interrupt you. I think people in my family and those around me and those that don't know me look at things that I've done and they say, wow, this guy takes huge risks. And in some sense, that may be true, but that's not how I look at it. So at least now, and in the last handful of years, I consider myself to be actually incredibly risk averse. And things that I do that may seem, and perhaps, they're risky from somebody else's perspective, but the things that I do and that I've done are after obsessive calculation, decision trees, and consulting with advisors and thinking and nights. And I don't take any big decision lightly, but once I'm convinced, we talked about weather a little bit. So once I'm convinced that probability is on my side, and that execution lies on me, I can make a very big concentrated bet.
So that's where the risk is perceived by the other side.
Yes.
Is that if, I'll give you an example. And I think that's the big difference, and maybe that's summarizes a little bit about your journey. You would have taken a big move in your 20s without really considering it, without calculating. So you didn't even know that it had a 20% chance of coming off.
Right.
Whereas today...
But it didn't matter when I was 20.
Right.
Because I did know something, which is that I could do it again and again and again.
Right.
I had all the confidence, because when you're ignorant...
Yeah.
Of course. You're,
I know everything. I know. I have a 22-year-old son.
Yeah.
And
the 22-year-olds are brilliant, smartest people in the world.
Well, I tell you what I love about my 22-year-old son is that he's, poor guy, has chosen entrepreneurship. So he's learning very quickly that he doesn't know everything.
You heard the Musk
And
thing?
I
It's
love
about
that.
it's about like entrepreneurship is eating glass and staring into the abyss.
God, that sounds like a perfect description.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. You know, it really teaches him. He's a super intelligent kid. He's one of the cleverest people I know.
Has to be.
Well, he's much, much cleverer than I am, that's for sure.
High bar? No, I'm kidding.
Well, I tell you what, we laugh that in our house,
Yeah.
so it's my wife, myself, and we got our 3 kids, 22, 19, and 12.
Yeah.
And as you know, I run a statistics company, right? You know, founded a sports statistics company.
Yeah.
And people always ask me, so are you a statistician? I'm like, no. Are you a mathematician? No. But I always consider I was pretty good at maths. The maths bar in my house is so high that I'm the 4th out of 5 for the level of maths in my house. And that's only because my 12-year-old still hasn't got to that level. But I think 2 years she's overtaking me. That makes me feel really humbled that I will be the worst at maths in my house. That's crazy. Anyway, I digress.
I loved math growing up, and I like reading, like, you know, cutesy mathematical theory stuff, like everything that Nassim Nicholas Taleb writes, you know. But I think that math is one of the most important kind of fundamentals in business and life and entrepreneurship and everything else.
I agree. Why do you say that?
So when you're thinking in decision making in business, we were just talking about it a moment ago, it's all about probabilities. So you have to understand probability, understand thinking in bets. Synthesizing data is everything that you're doing is we're synthesizing a bunch of information and then using that to make decisions based on probabilities. And all of this decision making, right, is algebra, and choosing the bets and the concentration of the bet and the amount of the bet and where it goes is all probability. It's all statistics.
It's analytical thinking at the end of the day.
Yeah, and if you understand the basic principles, right? So like Charlie Munger, you know, was famous for saying you have to have a lattice work of mental models. You have to have the fundamentals of all of these different intellectual disciplines, math, psychology, you know, whatever else, and tie them together. And I think one of the most important ones is math, because that's clear thinking, right? There's no more clear thinking. Truth is indisputable mathematically. So I think it's like a wonderful foundation for.
I agree. I think that's the thing that education systems these days, I think, gets incorrect about math. They teach math for the sake of math rather than for what math is there for, which is to improve our decision-making capability, to increase our analytical thinking and our critical thinking.
Yes.
Which are fundamental in life to success.
Yes.
Because life is just a series of decisions. Yes. Let's face it, from getting up and deciding what I'm going to wear, or how much time I'm going to spend thinking about what I'm going to wear, which you obviously, when you had white shirt and jeans, like,
you don't have to worry about that.
Take long, you know, that's very efficient of you. To everything, to major decisions. You know, I've got people who work with me, they laugh at me that I sometimes deliberate, and I think it's one of my faults, over tiny things.
Yeah.
Whereas massive decisions, I'll make a quick decision. And I think it's because I've analyzed the situation and it makes sense.
You have a good mental model for it.
Yeah.
So size doesn't matter.
Some would say.
So the size of the decision is irrelevant. It's just, do we have the models? Have we done the thinking on the subject? So I was sitting in the house with somebody that you know. I don't want to name drop him on the show recently, and he's telling me this like big complicated tax thing that he's trying to figure out, and I was like, oh, it's this, because I'd solved it in this context, so it was like an easy solution here. I was like, oh, I've been thinking about that for months. It's not because I'm smarter than him, right? But something small and simple for somebody else is something that I might have to think, you know, a lot about. So,
but I think this is actually, you're hitting something very, very key here. And I think this is where the risk taking is perceived by other people, is that someone like you doesn't see an additional risk, the fact that it's a $1 billion question or a $10 question. It's the same. Like you said size doesn't matter. For most people, it does.
Yeah.
They get stressed when it's worth more. Let's talk about just in financial.
Oh, I get stressed.
Yeah, but
it's irrelevant.
But you logic out everything else.
Yeah.
And I think that is a power to allow yourself to move on and go. Talk about why you can go at a pace that normal people can't. Did I just call you abnormal?
Yeah.
I think I just called you abnormal.
Yeah.
I've called you a lunatic and abnormal.
Yeah.
We're doing well.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And an average Joe.
I said you said you're an average Joe. I said you're anything but.
No, I'm teasing you.
Okay. Oh, stop it. So I think that's, the perception of risk lies in a lot of people's emotion to, and their perception to the decision that they have to make.
Yeah.
And also another thing that was going through my mind when you're talking about things, and you were saying you don't think you're a risk taker. It feels to me that you particularly, when you've gone and done some of what other people might consider crazy, wacky stuff, it's just stuff that you felt you had to do. Yeah. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to take this big risk here. You don't see it that way. It was just, I'm going to do this because this makes sense to me now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But look, and also, I've had an enormous amount of fun. And I enjoy going really, really, really fast and learning new things. Right. So I'm like, there's strengths and weaknesses, right? Like I'm really, really good with the details, but like, it's not my fun place to be. Yeah. I'm good at operations, but that's not my happy place, right? Yeah. My happy place is like creating and building and going fast. So I've always gotten to do the things I love. Now it's come with unbelievable, terrible, amounts of stress and like pain that's manifested itself physically, right? There's been, nights in years past under the desk crying, in the bathroom crying, lots of crying. It hasn't been easy. But there's no woe is me. Look how lucky I am. I'm the luckiest person in the world. So looking forward to what the next 40 years look like.
Amazing. I can't wait to find out.
Well, we're going to be friends for a long time.
I think so. You're stuck with me.
Well, Ray Kurzweil says we're approaching the singularity, so we should cruise over the event horizon and become cyborgs and live forever.
Beautiful. That was like a freaking disaster.
Certainly.
You talk about crying under the table.
I didn't mean to.
Well,
did I say that?
Once or twice.
Yeah.
Was there any point where you thought, that's it?
In what way? Like,
anyway.
Yeah. Well, look, I never thought about, suicide, if that's what you mean. I've felt like the world is over, lots of times, and it really felt like it was happening lots of times. The first time I kind of lost everything, I had to fire all my friends that were working for me, try to help them get jobs, couldn't do anything, couldn't pay commissions because cash disappeared, hiding my car from the repo guy, begging trying to get the electricity guy not to turn off my electricity. These were tough times. Unfortunately, I'd been through that more than once in my life.
Can you tell me about your worst day?
My worst day?
One day.
One day.
One day.
It's an easy answer. That was the day my mother died. That would be the worst day. Yeah. That was a bad day.
How did it affect you after that?
I was in my it's too bad. This was the person that I didn't expect us to go here. This was I've never done this on a podcast before. Or with most people that I know. So, let's see, how do I want to do that? So this is the person that always thought that I was going to be okay, and that I was going to be this like great outcome, and thought great things about me. But for a large part of my life, or like a very significant portion of my adult life up until that point, I was like, if you looked at me behaviorally, I was not any of those things. So it's sad that she hasn't gotten to see any of like the great successes, right? Like my daughter and my son and my wife. Or some of the things I've done in business, right? Like taking my dad up to the Nasdaq and ringing the Nasdaq bell with Janover in the background, and, giving a speech that's projected onto Times Square right after October 7th, saying I'm Yisrael Chai, or graduating at Harvard Business School. Like, she only got me, getting kicked out or dropping out of, college and high school and all these other things. And, I was in my 20s, and I was involved in a lot of the decisions. And, these aren't decisions that somebody in their 20s should have to make about their mother. So how has it affected me? It still affects me. I don't know. It's there's a lot there.
Sure. But you're saying that she, even though she didn't see, the successes that the huge successes, if you allow me to say that, I know you won't use that word.
We did, yeah. Trump would call them tremendous.
Tremendous.
Huge. But President Trump, if you need, I'm happy to help in the administration. Anything vis-a-vis Israel, you give me a call.
I think you'd provide a lot of value. Going back to your mother, I know you're trying to escape it.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you that quickly.
Okay.
If you will. So, he did say, and this is a mother's love, especially for sons. There's a dynamic there which is unparalleled to anything else. And you were saying that she was the one who believed you were already all of these things, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's right.
Which is an enormous thing. And to your own admission, you weren't yet. And then you lost her, and then became some of these things. Yeah. Or many of these things. She already saw you as that superhuman being. And I'm wondering how losing her at an early age, at a very impressionable age, you weren't a kid, but you're a very young adult that still has a lot to learn in life.
Yeah.
Did you feel you lost that one driver that really believed in you?
No. Up until, well, first off, my wife believes in me, and somewhere in there, I believe in me. She wasn't what drove me for that first, that first kind of tranche of my life, because I'd already made and lost a lot and hired and I was in my 20s, and I already, had all these financial outcomes and done these things. But unfortunately, her belief in me wasn't, the driver. I think a lot of it was a period of time of me trying to prove to my dad, who was the one that, probably didn't say very much, encouraging at all at any point ever. So it was probably, so a lot of the drive was me, trying to prove myself to my dad, which, I'm definitely past that. Though I still want you to be proud, Dad.
Don't sound positive to me.
Yeah, I'm a driven guy, and there's probably there's probably a lot there, but
let's wind it forward a little bit.
okay.
I'm always fascinated by the influence we have from our parents to how we then transfer that on our kids, for good and for bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, being aware as a parent is the first step.
Sure.
Are we even aware? I look at myself sometimes. My kids are older than yours, and I think about the number of mistakes I've made just by not being aware of that transfer.
Yeah.
Not that anyone's guilty. It's just the way things are.
Yeah.
I think that you are far more aware than I was when my kids were your kids' age. Your kids are 5 and 2.
Okay.
And I think that you're honestly, the way I see you, in a great position to be aware of transferring the good, and not transferring the negative, put it that way. Because there is always both sides, of course.
Yep.
That's how I see you. Do you agree with that? How do you see yourself as a young dad? I mean, I see you as a young dad with young kids.
Yeah. So look, I'm much more aware than my dad was. But by the way, love my dad. Like,
that's obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm doing all kinds of things that I think are good and useful to my kids. And I think about it through like a lot of lenses and angles, and I'm still like wildly flawed. Ask my wife, and still screw up all the time.
We can always ask our wives to tell us where we...
Yeah, we should just have them sit here and talk about us.
Yeah.
But the thing is that no matter what happens, our kids are going to grow up, and there's going to be a thing that one of us did or said at some point in their life that's totally insignificant to us, that wasn't part of our strategy or plan or things that we laid out. We might not have even thought about it, and they're going to have a story that's around it, and they're going to carry it with them without any context, and it's going to hurt and cause pain and whatever else, and it's outside of our control. So I know the things, I know how to address the things that I wished had been addressed for me, but I don't know how to address the things that they're gonna develop later, right? Because like it's what I don't know. So I'm doing the best with what I have. I can do better. I try to be very thoughtful and intentional about it, and they're going to be going to the therapist when they get older, I think, no matter what I do. So,
well, you live in Florida, so so it comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm trying to get it right. Not to spend so much time on my wife, but like, a lot of the credit with the kids goes to her. Yeah. But I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Well, I've seen you with your kids. You're doing a fantastic job. Yeah, look, but I tell you what the best thing about it is that, and I say this as a guy who's had kids for a lot longer than you have, is like, and this was a lesson I learned from a friend of mine before I had my first one. My wife was pregnant with Raphael, our oldest,
mm-hmm.
and my closest friend who had already had his first, even though it was still a baby, so she was still a baby, his first, but he said to me the best thing. And I don't know if he realizes, I don't know if I've told him this, just how much it helped me as a dad. He said to me when my wife was pregnant, he says, look, you can read all the books you want. You can take all the advice you want. There's only one rule with children. One rule. Yeah. Nothing else. Just make sure they know you love them.
Yeah. That's a big one.
And it sounds so obvious, but in today's world, we rush around, especially people like you and I, we fly here, we've got whatever. The kids need to know that we love them.
Yeah.
We need to, like you say, be intentional about it, show them and tell them in words.
Yeah.
And it's easy to take that for granted, and it shouldn't be ever. And he said to me, if you just make sure they know, everything else will fall into place. And I really feel that my journey in fatherhood has benefited from that one tiny piece of advice, a huge piece of advice.
Yeah.
he said to me over a beer, you know, when we're talking 23 years ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to call him after this and tell him how much I appreciated that thing, because I don't know if I ever told him.
Funny how these things happen.
Yes, that wasn't even me. What are you talking about? It was just in my mind. I don't know. But, you know, and I try and tell that to anyone who is about to have kids and they're trying to get it all right. There is no get it all right. And I think this comes across in you, is that knowing what we don't know, which we always say is what you want to look for in young founders. You know, I invest, I want to know that founders they know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Which for young founders is rare to get that right.
Yeah.
And I think that in life and in business, it's the same. You've got to be aware of what you don't know and then have the ability to move on with that uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Is being able to move when there's that uncertainty.
Yeah.
You know, people like yourself, you love the uncertainty. That's how it feels to me. It's like you'll just dive into it, but in a calculated way.
Yeah.
But you're like, you have no fear of it.
It's complicated.
Okay.
It's like I have a complicated relationship with uncertainty, but things that you're saying are right. And, you know, it's still scary. You're right.
But being scary is legitimate. Like trying to say something's not scary is denial.
Right.
It's great. It's scary. I'm going to do it anyway.
For sure.
But that's the place that most people get blocked.
And then I'm doing it, and I'm in it, and I'm like, this is
really scary.
This is a nightmare. Why am I
it up? Exactly.
Keep going.
But that's the joy in it, you know. And that's what I feel, and that's where I identify with you a lot on these things. And
we're brothers from another mother.
100%. And I always say that my greatest asset is that I don't have a fear of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of people do.
Well, everything is uncertain. So I think it's very interesting. I'm sorry for interrupting. I think it's very interesting when people say things. So I'm thinking back like 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Interest rates are going to go up. Interest rates are going to go down. Inflation is going to go up. But like, everybody has like a strong opinion. This person's going to win this. This person, this that. And like, for me, you know, we're talking math or maths as the
thank you
the Brits call it. But you know, as we discussed earlier, that's our language now. So back to math.
You created your own language. Let's not go there.
we took America and the language and most of the world's GDP.
We're gonna review that in a few years and see just how true that statement still is. And I might be talking to you in Chinese when we do it.
We may be speaking Chinese, or not, because you know we could talk about depopulation and you know, leverage on a macro level. Coming back,
math.
There's so I guess you're right. There's no. I think it's just acceptance that everything is uncertain. Like, so if you let the forgive me, if like in the grand you know, tapestry of time, if you let time run long enough, everything happens. So the certainty is that everything's going to happen.
Yeah.
But in the short term, it's like everything is just along a bell curve, and like nothing is definitely going to happen, and it's all uncertain.
But that's the thing that scares people, is that in the tapestry of time, everything's certain. But I've only got this one life.
Yeah.
And anything can happen. It could be the worst. It could be the best, or whatever.
It's up to you. Go hard.
But but you're saying go hard. That freaks people out, and then people are frozen.
Like, okay,
yeah,
because you. But you're like we. You know, what makes you who you are? You know, it's there's like some nature and nurture. There's like there's the genetics, which there's like 70,000 years of things that happened that compounded into you today. And then there's the stories that you were told around you growing up that you tell yourself, that put you in a position to be like the superstar of a human that you are. And, but that's not like the only way to be amazing. Like the trick is to be happy, right? So it would be nice if I could be content. Contentment isn't something I'm like very familiar with. Are you?
I am, actually.
Are you?
More than you.
For sure.
I think. But I think that, yeah, I feel like
I'm looking forward to when I'm your age.
Oh, there's a little dig there at the age. Well,
You look younger than me, so
I didn't want to say
it's
it.
the
I'm
hair.
glad you said that. You know,
it's the hair.
But yeah, I feel it's the idea of contentment is a really interesting one. I feel that over the last few years, I've had more and more contentment, and I've thought about this a lot. I've been trying to work out why, because it's not actually, that's not an algorithm of, or at least I haven't found the algorithm for it. But what I did sort of come back to, I think, a little bit is, when I think about what do we want in life, and you're saying contentment, and some people would say success. And what is success? You know, success is very individual. Most people translate that to financial success.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is why I have an issue with it, because I know a hell of a lot of people who are financially successful who are wildly unhappy in their lives.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that that's not what people are looking for. Is people without money are saying, "Oh, it's all about the money." It's not.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up thinking a few years ago that what we're actually looking for in life, and go with me for a minute, is significance. And what do I mean by that? That's a huge word. Okay, so I've thought about this quite a lot. How do we live a significant life? You don't have to be president of the United States to live a significant life. I've come to the conclusion, with myself at least, and I'd love your opinion on this, is that a significant act is practically always defined as a positive impact we have on another human being. And that doesn't have to be philanthropic. It doesn't have to be social impact. It could be an entrepreneur, employ people.
Yeah.
You know, you're having give the world something technological that it needs.
Yeah.
You're having a positive impact on other people's life.
Yep.
And when we can get that significance in our lives through some act, and it could be a single act, and then that significance will last a certain amount of time, or significant life, you know, God willing, we should all have significant lives, then you reach contentment, because you get up most days energized by the crap you have to deal with. Because that's also the thing, is that thinking that we're going to sit back and just live an easy life, that's unrealistic. In fact, that's not significant, and it doesn't lead to contentment. The people who don't have any stuff to deal with because it's all being taken care of actually become miserable. Like that, I think, is shown. You know, people who take away all the things they have to cope with, they have no coping mechanisms, and then they end up pretty miserable. So I sort of look at myself, honestly, and I'm pretty happy, like with where I've got to.
Oh, I'm happy.
Yeah, no, okay. And happy and contentment, there's the difference there. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree. But we should explore that a little bit. What do you think about my idea of what leads us to contentment, that sort of, you know, and then when you're in that place, your ability to help others is so much more advanced, coming from the point of significance. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the best I ever feel is when I'm being useful. Like one way of being high utility, you know, for me, is through the business. So you're useful to customers, you're useful to employees, and useful to investors. Hopefully, right? Hopefully you're useful to all these people. So this is like a really nice way to be useful. I find I've had the incredible good fortune to spend time with some of the most talented, wonderful young men and women in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Recently through Zelle, and the one-on-one utility of whether it's, you know, mentorship or just not even mentorship. It's hard for me to imagine me being somebody else's mentor, but like being useful to this one person who's, you know, 10, 15 years younger and maybe like farther than that behind from the experience. So like, so that's amazing. My wife is on the local board of Friends of the IDF. And I think, you know, through organizations like yours, I think this is amazing too. And vis-a-vis contentment, I think I'm pontificating, which is what you're not paying me, because this is not being paid to do this.
It's a non-profit.
Yeah.
What do you want? Happy to take your donation though at any time.
Let me donate some of my theory for you. So
We'll take anything you got.
I think we are genetically pre-programmed not to be content. I think if you got a bunch of like content cavemen and Neanderthals, you'd have there wouldn't be too much food or procreation or what have you. And I think it's something that I have to wrestle. And there's things like meditation, which is really hard for me, or it has been hard for me. There's this idea of just like sitting quietly and in nothing. That's an anxiety attack. But I do find that if I want to be content, it's like feet in the grass or feet in the sand in nature alone by myself without a phone or an electronic device, in like under the sun with vitamin D, and there's contentment there. Something about like the connection with nature and the universe. There's these moments of contentment, but I'm not programmed to be just content.
I think you've touched on something that really makes sense to me. I think moments of contentment potentially. Like when you asked me if I'm content, I emphatically said yes. But hang on, I'm starting to question it now. Maybe that's complete nonsense.
I don't want to call you out, but what are you doing with this wonderful organization that you've set up?
Well, hang on. We'll talk about that in a sec, because it's important to me, obviously, to talk about. But I think that maybe what we can aspire to, and all we can aspire to, are moments of contentment.
I 100% agree.
Because otherwise, there is no such thing as constant and continuous contentment.
No, because then you're an eggplant.
Yes.
You're
whatever
vegetable.
that means. We don't want to be that, do we? So our aspiration is moments of contentment.
Yes.
So, okay, definitely. And we're happy.
And then I find them in moments of significance and in moments with nature.
Oh, okay. I love that. There we go. We've nailed it.
Yeah.
Done. World solved.
Nobel Peace Prize?
We'll share it.
Well, okay, 50-50.
60-40?
Fine, it's your show.
Okay, thank you. Depends how much you donate. I'll give you 100 too. I'm not precious.
Donating my time.
We're going to have to take years. There's something you said about Neanderthal man in the caves. And you said that if Neanderthals were content, I'm summarizing a little bit. You're saying we'd have no progress.
Right.
And that, I feel, is so true. We get progress through hardship.
Yes.
It's a known thing. And people talk about it all the time, whether they really internalize how important and how true that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I meet people who are, I don't think the right word is high achievers. I think it's just people who are outliers.
Yeah.
In a positive sense.
Sure.
Total dumbasses.
Which am I right or left tail?
We'll find out. But I'm talking about, let's say, people who really break barriers, do things that no one else does, push forward the world, and really create change.
Yeah.
They've all got something in common.
Yep.
And that's they've gone through hardship.
Yep.
And with RideForUnity, I've had the pleasure to meet some of the most incredible people, superhuman achievers, trailblazers, unbelievable people. Yeah. But they've all got that in common. And I will say it's not just hardship. They've gone through some significant trauma as well.
Yeah.
And I'd like to talk to you about
that. you maybe.
No, I'd like to talk to you about it.
Yes, you would.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And maybe we'll do something depending on what it looks like. I just want to say,
up to you. It's your show.
Just want to say I'll be the one asking the questions here.
Okay.
So when you talk about growth through hardship, I think about thermodynamics and progress through entropy, right? It's the chaos that creates the progress. Taleb calls it anti-fragility, things that get stronger through that kind of chaos. So, I tend to agree with you.
Thank you. I feel honored.
You feel validated now?
Yeah, but I feel like you're skirting around.
Sure.
The question.
Well, was there a question?
Well, there was a little bit. Well, there wasn't, but I was trying to insinuate a question.
Well,
I didn't want to
go on.
So the question is, Blake.
Yeah.
It wasn't give me your general thoughts
Oh, okay.
on growth through hardship.
Yeah.
I'd like to explore
Sure.
your own growth through hardship.
Yeah. Well, so there's been a panoply of hardships.
Panoply.
Yes.
Wow.
You're a linguist. Do you find that to be is this the appropriate setting for pulling panoply out of my pocket and dropping it on the?
Tell you what, panoply. It's definitely the first time today I've heard the word panoply.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Well, now I'm insecure. Have I placed it poorly in the?
I think it's beautiful. Sorry, I interrupted you in the middle of talking about your growth through hardship.
I've had a plethora of.
I prefer panoply.
Well, it's gone now.
Okay.
Edit it out.
I'm rather ruining your whole presentation of your growth through hardship.
I mean,
I do that occasionally.
Okay, so I'll touch on some things, but I think it's really important to note that I am not like a victim. I don't feel bad for myself. There's no like woe is me. Got to be really clear. I hit the ovarian lottery. I was born to an amazing mother who was Jewish and thought I was like a god, and in Long Island, in a middle class, well-to-do family, had a great education, had lots of luck, all the opportunity in the world. I was a kid that was troubled. I was a tough kid, and I got sent away to one of these schools that they kind of like tend to make movies about and whatnot. I think it appeared on the cover of the New York Times more than once, but it certainly appeared in the New York Times more than once. One of these schools where they take young kids to correct them behaviorally, and the parents think they're sending their kid to a good place to help them out, and this place was like kind of evil. So 13 or 14 years old, I got 14 years old, I got sent to one place, which was, they called it a wilderness program. There were some like bad things that happened there, but broadly like a good experience because there was like this big connection with nature. So, and then the other place, I mean, it was a scary movie, man. And then after I got out of there, I kind of went into like a pretty dark place, which was like at the tail end of high school. And it's funny. Well, none of it's really funny. But I remember sitting on my bed when I was living in the Dominican Republic, well over a decade later. And I didn't really like remember anything that happened. Like this was like just like like an empty space in my mind. And I remember reading the article in the New York Times, and I was like, remembered everything. A lot of bad things to remember. I could probably share a story or two. One of the things that happened, through my, through my 20s is I also sadly, lost all of my closest friends from every kind of important part of my life. So, my best friend growing up, in Long Island, and then, my best friends from that school, and then my best friend from high school, and then my best friend in the Dominican Republic, and and then mom, and so there was stuff. I didn't really think about any of it while it was happening, except for when it was at that school. You're kind of like that was scary. So anyway, so that's some like that's some you know, and then there was what do I like 24 years old. There was a bankruptcy. You know, it's hardship when you, but it's harder for your friend that you have to fire, the friend that comes and trusts you that you fire, and anyway, I took this a lot of places.
I'm taking so much from what you're saying. Like, I mean, I'll tell you what's going through my mind in the last comment you made. I honestly believe that being able to understand and feel the pain of someone else is critical in life. It's critical in a marriage. It's critical as a parent. It's critical in business, as an employer, as a colleague. It's critical to understand. You know, that's how we connect and how we can bridge any different perspective we have, is to understand their pain. The fact that you actually get to a level after all the pain you sort of touch on, and I understand how difficult that is, and I see it, obviously, and I thank you very much for sharing it. You've been through a huge amount of difficulties, and your final statement is, but it's much tougher for this other guy that I had to fire.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing in a number of ways, and says a hell of a lot about you. It says a hell of a lot about you. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
There was another thing that you mentioned, which I think is absolutely critical. I'd like to touch on this.
Sure.
You started that last section. You prefaced it with, I want to make it clear I'm not a victim.
Yeah.
Which, totally, I'm with you on that. Yeah. The thing is that people decide whether they're a victim or not, regardless of the circumstances. I've seen, and this is one of the greatest ills that I see going on at the moment, is this victimhood culture.
Don't get me started,
okay,
dude.
Well, I want to get you started on this because it really drives me mad.
I'm going to offend people.
Offend whoever you like. Because when someone decides, and they could be the most privileged people in the world, are deciding they're a victim, that's when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And I see victimhood culture being the complete antithesis of accountability.
Yeah.
And when you say, I'm not a victim,
yeah.
even though you've been through some serious shit, yeah, but that's you taking accountability for your life. And that is without that, Blake, you wouldn't have become who you are, and you wouldn't be able to go on to be even greater person that you're doubtless going to be in my mind. Yeah. I'm your biggest fan. Probably second to your wife. She loves you too.
Sure.
Okay. But I want to talk about this because I think that when we look at today's society, there is so much victimhood culture.
Yeah.
And it's all circulates around the self.
Yeah.
It's and everyone can have as many excuses as they want why things aren't working for them. Yeah. And it is a disease that we need to try and solve.
Ooh. Do you want to talk about the woke mind virus?
We'll talk about, you now shoot your mouth off at whoever you want and say whatever you think, because I am likely to agree with a lot of it. Or maybe not. Let's see.
Okay, so just to touch for a moment on something from a moment ago, which was the pain thing. It's just that, like, I went through pain, and you've been through pain in your life, and our friend over here has been through pain in his. And when your finger touches the stove, what hurts, right? So, you know, somebody could have been through something that's much worse or nowhere near as bad, but the feeling of pain was just as traumatic. So it's just like, you know, my pains, whatever I've been through isn't, you know, more or less in the context of, you know, how my mind interprets it. So victimhood culture. It's like one of the very embarrassing things in, you know, in America. You know, and I do believe the direction is changing, but I guess I'll just do whatever I want with this, which is, instead of talk about all of these people that are behaving in this way, I'll talk about what, you know, the way I think about it. So the way I think about it is, there's the Jewish people who have been persecuted for 5,000 years, not victims. There's been collections of Jews into ghettos and organized exterminations. And, the Holocaust was like a recent one, but one of many. Just the technology and the organization was better during the Holocaust. In Italy, they stuffed us into ghettos and they made us money changers. In Poland and Ukraine and Russia, there were pogroms for generations. Then the Jews come to America. They can't get a job, because you're Jewish. And like, what did Jewish people do? You got two options. You can nurture and foster a value system of how terrible things are for us and how sad it is and how much everybody owes us, or we could like nurture a value system and a culture of education, family, and taking care of each other because you're like regularly, because what's been outside has been like pretty dark. So when the Jewish community moved to America and moved to New York, and the law firms wouldn't hire us and the accounting firms wouldn't hire us, our mothers told us, like, you come home for dinner, you spend time with the family, you study, and you work hard, you learn, you work hard. Like that's what we got. We work hard and we kind of help each other out. And we got like a great network like that. And the outcome is the most successful law firms wouldn't hire Jews. Now all the most successful law firms are Jewish, right? The accounting firms wouldn't hire us. Now the most successful accounting firms are Jewish. You made us money changers, so we produced Rothschilds. We print and mass produce Nobel Peace Prizes. Totally disproportionate from the amount of us that there are in the world population. And what does it do? It actually creates kind of more disdain for us. And, we're not without fault. We're kind of like, you get a bunch of us together, we're kind of arrogant and obnoxious, and we club together. But why are we clubbing together? So anyway, I am very proud. I did the 23andMe, and it was like 98.6% Ashkenazi Jewish 5,000 years back. And I'm very proud. Listen, my children are, they have half of that. The other half, their mother's, has a Viking DNA. So like my kids are super cool. Wow. I'm very proud of my 5,000 years of optimization for family, community, curiosity, and drive. So there's two ways you could go. You can take algebra out of schools or remove gifted programs from schools in a race to the bottom.
Which is what you think is happening right now.
There are like physical geographic pockets of America where it is happening. And there's places where it's not. It's not happening in Florida. I don't want to politicize the conversation for straight like red or blue or whatever else. I just want to say that, that's not, like, there's two ways to deal with it, right? It's poor me, you owe me, or it's problem solving. Now, this is not to say that like the disadvantaged in the world are not victims. Like, if you're born in sub-Saharan Africa, in a village, like, odds are stacked against you. That's terrible. Like, you might actually be happier than the next incremental person in New York, but like odds are against you in so many ways for whatever like outcome you want to get. So it's like we have to figure that out.
Agree.
But not the way I've seen it happening here. Not this like this DEI system that turned into like a cancer. DEI, great idea.
Yep.
The mechanism for delivery and the outcome, horrific.
We see it. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And this is actually with RideForUnity. One of the things I'm really focusing my messaging on is that when we talk about equality, let's talk about equality. Equality of opportunity, sure, absolutely. And you could say, well, there is an equal opportunity for underprivileged areas of society. You can't fix that in a moment. You have to work through education to offer that. But equality of outcome is causing such weakness. And like you said, a race to the bottom is exactly the problem. I'll give you an example from my life. So my wife and I set up a sports data company in 2004. We just celebrated 20 years, which I'm very proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, being a sports data company, most of the people who are going to apply for jobs are going to be men. Okay. Now, my wife is all about offering women opportunities. Okay. And yet, and I'm really proud of us, out of today, 270 employees, we have about 12 women.
Yeah.
Now that sounds like we're not doing our job from the point of view of equality.
Right.
But that's nonsense. We totally are.
Yeah.
But the reality is that people who know more about soccer, which is our mainstay, are men.
Yeah.
And we're just going to it's going to be about meritocracy.
Yeah.
The best person for the job.
Yeah.
And my wife is exactly about that. And we have tried what we can to open the doors for the interview process to as many women as possible.
Yeah.
And not only women, by the way, all areas of society, more peripheral areas.
Yeah.
But if they're not good enough, they're not good enough.
Yeah.
If I guarantee you that if that company had 50% men, 50% women, we would have been shut ages ago.
Yeah.
And that's not a sexist remark. A lot of people would hear that and they think that I'm being sexist.
Yeah.
We have to open the door.
So this nonsense happening with the Secret Service was.
I know. And it's, this is the point that I feel that I want to make with RideForUnity, is that we've got to give a place for everyone to say, I'm here.
Yeah.
So we can't shut anyone up. And what DEI has become is actually shutting people up.
So I just want to say that. So first off, I'm stealing from one of the great HBS professors, Boris Groysberg, who's a lovely man and brilliant and puts on a hell of a show. And he teaches this class about stars and A players. And Boris, you're not listening, but if I quote anything wrong here, my bad. But he tells it so well, which is that if you have two equal candidates, so like here's the thing about what you explain in your company. You have the 12 women and the 200 something men, whatever it is. I guarantee your hire rate for women is an order of magnitude greater from percentage as a percentage than it is for men, right?
Yeah.
Like you get 3,000 applications of men, and X come in, you get 300 applications from women.
Yeah.
And there's that higher approval rate. And like the interesting thing, I think with women and with diversity, and diversity means that if everybody in the company is black, you hire a white guy. If everybody in the company is women, you hire a man. But in this context, if you have a man and a woman, they're equal, that have, from a meritocratic perspective, are equally qualified for a job. If the woman will take the job, you want the woman, because her path was probably harder and more difficult than the guy's path. And also, in the context of an interview, a woman is more likely to interview you and make sure that there's a fit both ways than a guy, generally speaking. And again, in the case of like a minority, right? Like if you get a gorgeous white guy and a average looking, Native American guy, like that average looking Native American dude, if he has the same qualifications and scores the same in the interviews and everything else as the white guy, like he's probably the more qualified guy because he had to go through much more to get to that point. And you and me talked about it also, but like cognitive diversity is high utility, right? As long as it's a meritocratic process,
Of course.
yeah. So we know we're totally aligned.
Yeah. We're living in our own echo chamber here.
Yeah. That's why I agreed to do this, right? Give me somebody that agrees with everything that I think.
Exactly.
And
we're part of the problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we need diversity in this conversation. We need like
Absolutely.
somebody like
Someone to disagree with us.
Yeah, we need somebody here to disagree with
Next
us.
time.
I can grab my wife.
So, okay, you're coming up to your 42nd birthday.
Oh no.
I told you earlier that I believe that the 40s are just the best decade. And you replied to me, you said, yeah, that's because you're in your 40s.
Right.
Even though I'm only just still.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out of it soon. What do you think is in store for you, honestly? And don't say I don't know. I know you don't know.
Right.
But like, what do you want to be in store for you? What do you want to get up to in this decade, which I think it can be the most powerful that the world has seen Blake Janover yet?
It will be. So if we drop it in like 4 categories, self, family, business, community, from a self perspective, there's like some physical hurdles, or not hurdles, but like milestones that I'm working on that I'm going to get to. I'm not sure about the whole spiritual thing. This is something I still kind of think about. It's abstract, but like my mental and physical health is important, and I've done a fairly good job optimizing for that. Family, to be a good present father and husband, and not get lost in the inertia of everything that's going on, right? So if in 10 years my kids are like, oh my God, I have an amazing relationship with my father, I love him so much, he's really tough sometimes, and so if I've got like a happy wife and happy kids that feel love, like, this is good. Okay. Business, we've got a public company, and I would feel very good if I delivered something like a 20% CAGR to my IPO investors over an extended period of time. And we'll see like that. We'll see what that looks like. Our business is, broadly, we're connecting the commercial real estate industry and watching that manifest itself through our software products, through their adoption, and being useful to customers and useful employees, and that kind of like trickling to shareholders, me being the biggest one. Right. So I'm not being like altruistic here. I own most of the stock, so would love to deliver myself a fabulous return over the next, 10 years, and to have been a good CEO as measured by delivering shareholder value. Right. It's not the only measure, but it's a measure I care about. Yeah. That's the truth. And now we're going 10 years out. If I'm playing with this, I care very much. I'm very proud to be an American. And I care very, very much about Israel. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the tail end of this decade of mine, if there's a transition from private to public sector. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's via the National War College Alumni Association and, what I'm doing there and how that continues, or if it's what I'm doing in with these like amazing humans at Zell. But I'm going to continue to nurture both of these paths and figure out what's the highest utility version of myself to America and Israel. So I'm going to sum it up, be useful to myself, be useful to my family, be useful to my shareholders, customers, and employees, and be useful to Israel and America.
Useful is the
utility,
is the theme. Utility always through efficiency and
or significance.
There you go. I think the combination of utility and significance is a great ambition.
I think they're the same. I think it's the same thing. Being useful is.
But have a look; it's always to someone else.
Yes,
in many ways.
Yes,
and when you went through those,
the best way to be useful to myself is by being useful to others.
I find that fascinating, and I'm fully confident that you will. I won't say hit the goals, because it's not goals. It's just you will continue on that journey.
That's the path I'm on.
Exactly, and that's a beautiful path. And this is, if we talked about the pace, what I'm hearing from you, this is just what reflecting back what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
is that the fast pace isn't stopping, which is great.
No,
the big difference between 20s Blake and 40s Blake, and hopefully 50s, 60s Blake, is that it will be less running in circles, and more running in a straight line, in a scalable and sustainable manner.
That's the plan.
That is no more house of cards. that is going to be solid with foundations, God willing. And I think, I know that I'm blessed to know you. I really am.
I feel the same.
And I think that you have so many good things ahead. And I want to touch before we part on this. You mentioned Israel.
Yeah.
I live in Israel. You live here in Florida.
Don't rub it in.
Well, maybe there's a strength to it. I have a good friend he's a big contributor to Israel.
By the way, I say don't rub it in, but I'm proud to live in Florida, proud to live in America.
Of course, yeah. You don't have to qualify your statements. Everything's fine. No one's listening.
That I know.
No one's listening. It's just you and
that
me.
I know. No, but it was in case Trump.
That's right. Of course. Yeah. So, a good friend of mine who he's a big contributor to Israel, has been for many, many years, and he loves Israel. He lives in the States, and I said to him once, I said, "Don't you want to make Aliyah, come and live in Israel?" It sounded like an obvious question.
Yeah.
And he said, "I would love to, on the one hand, but on the other hand, I don't," and I found this really interesting. He goes, "I don't want to ruin my love of Israel by living there."
Sure. The problem with Israel is all the Israelis.
Exactly. We are the problem.
And no disrespect to Israelis. My family's Israeli.
Stop qualifying. You say whatever the hell comes to your mind. I love it. We're going to cut that.
I don't want to piss off all my Israeli friends.
Oh, you've done that a million times. But, the whole region is going through a very, very difficult time. I mean, everything there's a lot of tragedy all over the place. Speaking from an Israeli perspective, and I deal a lot, as you know, in the Gulf nations, and it's really tough. These are complex times and very tragic for a lot of people. In Israel, there's such a cloud over the whole country at the moment that I'm telling you, Blake, it's a benefit to be outside of that cloud to actually help.
Yeah.
Because when you're under that cloud and you can't escape it, there is a benefit for living in your Floridian bubble, so that you are free from that cloud, so that you can actually contribute and help. And I see that, and I think that the combination of living the cloud as we do in Israel in many ways, and trust me, I'm delighted to escape it, and I feel like sometimes I live in my RideForUnity bubble. I go all over the place, and the bubble's good sometimes. It protects you from that external pressure.
Yeah.
And I just want to wish you to use the bubble wisely, because I think it can also be a help.
Yeah.
Whilst not disconnecting yourself, which I know you wouldn't because of your roots, because of who you are.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't think I was going anywhere with that particularly. I think it was.
Listen, I'm connected to, very connected to the soul of Israel, and I'm very connected to you. I look forward to walking this path together in the decade ahead and beyond.
I look forward to it. It's going to be a great journey, and we don't have to know what's going to happen. We just have to walk it together.
Hell yeah.
Blake Janover, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, bro.